everybody, it's Chuck Pressburg from Press Check Training and Consulting. Second day at ShotShow 2023. We're here at the BE Meyers booth. MIL-SPEC has not gotten a chance to give you guys a rundown on the MAWL laser, which is the showcase product that BE Meyers offers. So we're going to cover the MAWL laser first, and then we're going to move down some of the product line that we have out and are showing here at the show today. So for those of you that have not seen it, which is probably not very many of you, the MAWL is the multifunction aiming laser that BE Meyers is currently offering. It offers a visible near IR pointer and near IR illuminator setting in both restricted and non-restricted powers. Some of the features of the MAWL is that the laser housing is offset from the rifle to allow the shooter to have proper ergonomics for their C-clamp grip and activate the A and B buttons without the need of remote tape switches. If for some reason, based on rail size, your arm, hand placement, whatever, you choose not to use these, there are ports in the back that you can run a remote switch if you want to activate your laser from a front grip or from further back on the rail, what have you. Runs off a 1CR123 battery with thumb screw battery cap, which can be utilized while wearing gloved hands. There's a high, medium, and low setting slider, and the high setting slider has a lockout. So that is a deliberate action, and then you have an A and B button. That gives you a total of 6 separate settings that are available, and then through 2 push and hold programming, we opened up 2 additional settings. So there's now a total of 8 settings available for the MAWL. That was a change in 2023. So we added an illuminator only in the event that you wanted to use the MAWL with some type of clip-on night vision device in front of a day optic. And you're using the MAWL's illuminator only to provide additional near IR energy for your PVS 30 or what have you. And then we also made a very, very low intensity pointer, which was designed for individuals that were attempting to zero the MAWL in a really, really dark environment where the MAWL's energy is pretty much the only IR out there, and you're getting a lot of bloom off of the paper, and it's interfering with your ability to group the gun properly during the mechanical zero. So by making a very low intensity pointer, you get less IR backsplash off of your target. I don't know why anybody would zero at night anyway. It has a co-aligned visible laser. I zero all of my laser devices during the day, using traditional daytime stabilized shooting techniques to get a more accurate shot group on paper to take the shooter error out of my zeroing process. The MAWL has a rotator tail cap or a head switch up front, and it not only acts as the power switch, but it also covers the laser emitters for eye safety purposes. So when it is in vis mode, the IR emitters are covered. When it's in IR mode, the visible emitter is covered. This is removable. Putting a nose of a cartridge in here and popping it off with a D10 so you can get to the actual lens surfaces and perform maintenance. Some guys that had earlier MAWLs, they don't have this feature. So based on that feedback, we went ahead and made the propeller cap removable for cleaning, or in the event you used it like a barricade stop or something like that, and you smashed the front of the MAWL into something really hard and broke your propeller cap, you could replace the propeller cap. It has a blue screw capability on the bottom side. So the blue screw has a shipping plug. You put it into the other shipping plug, and makes all features of the MAWL on the restricted version eye safe for force-on-force, UTM, simunition, miles type training when you're going to be pointing the weapon at actual other soldiers, cops, or your friends. That covers pretty much the overall functionality of it. It is a 3-piece design: the tail cap, mid-body, and what I call the turbo head. And they're modular so that the laser can be taken apart inverted on the gun and put in on the other side. So this MAWL is set up for a right-handed shooter, but I could take it, pop it, turn it around, flip the mount 180 on the gun, and it would sit over here offset to the left for a left-handed shooter. Moving over here, we've got the glare recoil. This is a pretty cool little device. It is a visible laser, green laser, that's used for crowd control and escalation of force, like hail and warning stuff. This is the program of record for the United States Marine Corps for their hail and warning capability. And what it is an adjustable width visible green illuminator. So it's expandable, just like the illuminator on a PEC 15 or a D-ball. And because of the visual spectrum, you can use it to blind people, let them know, signal like, hey, you there, stop, whatever. The thing that puts this apart was that some of the older GWAT era green lasers, they were not eye safe, like inside of like 25 meters. So if you fired that thing at somebody up close, you were above FDA minimum standards. The Marines said that they wanted something that was bright enough that could be seen from far away, but was also eye safe. And so the solution to that problem was a software algorithm and built-in laser rangefinder. So when you go to use this on a crowd of people or a vehicle rushing your checkpoint or whatever, you fire the system, it sends out a rangefinder pulse, and then based on how far away it is, the software knows how much energy it can put out to keep the laser eye safe. So the laser is much brighter at 300 meters than it is at 20 meters, and the software algorithm knows the difference. So the DoD is looking at this for putting on the CROWS 2 remote weapon stations, so that vehicles like the Stryker, MATV, any of the ones that have remote 50 cals or Mark 19s, 240s on top, will have the ability to pan, tilt, zoom, and if they see a vehicle coming in, actually designate it with a visible laser. So that's pretty cool. The C1 Plus is the civilian class 1 version of the MAWL DA, which is the restricted 3 Bravo laser. On the illuminator side, very, very little changes. Due to the VXEL technologies that's used in the MAWL and how that FDA measures laser energy for FDA eye safety, the C1 Plus is able to give an IR illuminator that is perceived by most people that look at it as bright or brighter than a restricted PEC 15 laser. And that's because the restricted PEC 15 laser is using a single diode and a beam splitter to create that flashlight effect. And the FDA measures how many emitters, how much energy is put out by each emitter. If you have a cluster with lots of emitters, you can put out a lower aggregate of energy across all of them that gives you a brighter effect on target without it being non-eye safe. So when you run a C1 Plus and a DA side by side, if I was an instructor and I had nods on and 2 guys had MAWL and they fired it on the target, but what I would see by the guy that had the restricted laser was that his near IR pointer inside of his flood would appear more intense and brighter, and the guy with the class 1 system, the pointer would be more faint in there. But the brightness of the illuminators would look nearly identical to my perception through my night vision. Why does that matter? In the United States, law enforcement are not allowed to buy restricted lasers on just their department letterhead. The way that the Federal Drug Administration runs variants, the agency has to purchase it. So there are officers that are authorized to buy their own gear, but their department's not going to provide it for them. So there are cops that are willing to go out and buy their own laser, but they don't have the legal means to buy a full power restricted unit. So the C1 Plus and its illuminator, I like to call duty grade. Meaning that it's bringing enough near IR energy on board that if an individual officer bought this system, I would not feel that they were undergunned trying to operate in a grid-up environment of their hometown or their city, where they're potentially having to project IR energy past street lights, burning into buildings to be able to see people standing back in rooms, and things of that nature. So the more light there is in the ambient environment, the more power your illuminator has to have on board to make sure that you can shine it in everything that you want to see. For those of you guys out there that don't use night vision and lasers, it would be like if you were staring into the front of a car's headlights and they were on bright. Is the Surefire mod light or cloud in your pocket bright enough that if somebody got out of the driver's door and just stood there, that your flashlight could punch past the bright lights that are coming into your face and let you ID who the driver of that car was beyond the bright headlights? And we see that same phenomenon in the near IR spectrum. So power matters. You can have too much, but you can also have not enough. And so I'm really, really happy with the performance of the C1, especially its illuminator, compared to the other Class 1 civilian available lasers that are out there on the market. In between the C1 Plus and the recoil, we've got our little Kiji here. Kiji is a low-cost IR illuminator that can interface with Surefire style light bodies. Very, very simple design, compatible with regular Surefire tail caps, and it's basically providing a really, really bright IR flashlight to kind of defeat some of those lighting conditions that you could see in a grid-up environment of a city. It also can help you out. We've got one mounted up here on a diving board. This PVS-30 is a good piece of gear, but when you start stacking lenses at night, when it gets really, really dark, the systems can struggle to bring in the amount of light that you need to really rectify and identify targets out at distance. So having your own onboard near IR energy, if the enemy situation will allow for it, you can punch that out there and really light up the area and give the PVS-30 the near IR photons that it needs to rectify the energy to be able to show you shapes and sizes and shades of color, so that you can make a determination of friend or foe and whether or not you can or should engage what you're wanting to shoot at. So Kiji is used in weapon illuminator capacity in this role. Here's the variant that I like to use. I run Surefire. I used to run a Surefire IR illuminator, the M1 IR illuminator. Then I switched over to the V1 Vampire on my helmet. And the reason why I did that was for operating UTVs and ATVs in hours of limited visibility. Yeah, I had a cool Polaris ATV in a previous life in my old job that had IR headlights on it, and that's really cool. But if I'm driving across the desert and I get to a wadi that the approach angle is too steep for my quad and I'm going to roll it, I need to drive up and down the wadi until I find a slope that's gradual enough that I can commit and go down in there to cross this obstacle and get back on where I'm going. The issue becomes when I take my Polaris and I turn it to parallel the top of the wadi, all the IR energy stays on the plateau and the entire wadi looks like a void. And so my night vision can't see down into the ground that I'm trying to survey to determine my route selection for my ATV. So by having active IR energy on board with my helmet, now I can project IR energy that is completely separate and detached from the headlights of my off-road vehicle and punch that IR energy exactly where I want to survey the ground. Problem with the systems that I was using is that they were LED based. And so LED flashlights have the same fading out. We use that term throw for how far you can see a flashlight's beam and how how much it stays coalesced. Like, yeah, man, that flashlight has a lot of throw. That means that it's, you know, bright enough that you can detect stuff at 75 or 100 or even beyond that. But it still diffuses over time. Lasers are culminated energy. So by switching to a near IR laser, I now keep my pattern of energy tighter and I can push it further. So if I'm operating something like a Polaris Razor at a really, really high rate of speed, you know, I'm just taking off like this thing's a sandrail and I'm wide open under nods, my infrared headlights that are LED based might stop at a certain threshold and everything beyond that is black to me. And I can literally outrun my headlights, and I can be operating at a speed where by the time I can visually identify the obstacle, I don't have enough reaction time to move from the obstacle. So having the Kiji illuminator on the helmet allows me to throw IR energy down the road, down the trail, further out beyond the reach of my light bar, my IR LED light bars. We've got it on the S&S mount here. This also allows you to go to umbrella lighting. If I moved, let's say I had to go clear a subway, a deep underground subway or parking complex, and the lights were totally off. You know, night vision goggles amplify existing light. You know, 1,000,000 times 0 is still 0. If there's no existing light, then you're not going to get any illumination. So you're going to have to bring your own. But if you have IR energy going to the front, every time you turn and look at your buddy, it's like somebody shining a handheld torch in your face, and you're whiting out that guy's nods. So by rotating the Kiji up like this, I can have that energy go off of the concrete ceiling of the subway tunnel or whatever, and we call this umbrella lighting, and it'll shine down and create a nice even IR burn inside of the subway so that everybody's nods can work and we can actually see where we're walking and be able to manipulate our environment. So really excited about the Kiji. You know, 100 different uses for IR energy. Why do you carry a handheld light? Why do you have a weapon mounted light? Why do you have a helmet mounted light? People think that night vision is this crazy black magic, but you know, the electromagnetic spectrum and physics dictate that most of the rules of the road about white light usage generally apply in the near IR spectrum as well. It's not rocket science. So don't shine your white light in your buddy's face when he's trying to do CQB. Don't shine IR in your buddy's face when he's trying to do CQB. It's kind of simple. All right. The old tried and true, the Islid family. We've got the 200P, that designates 200 milliwatts of power. To give you a frame of reference for that, the Insight LA5 Ultra High Power, or the LA5 Charlie, is 150. The MAWL DA and the MAWL ER, their illuminators on high power, 150. So this little guy punches out at 200. It's adjustable diode beam splitter, and when you bring that thing together, the IR energy is bright enough that it will catch particulate matter, and it looks like a lightsaber under nods. You can see the trace of it the entire way, which isn't good for giving away your position if it was on an individual weapon laser, but for signaling aircraft, it is phenomenal. You can circle it around in the sky, and it looks like a lightsaber lasso in the sky, and it can be seen for miles and miles and miles. So it's very, very good for getting supporting aircraft's attention to be able to cue them to what you want to see. And then its big brother is the Ultra. The Ultra is a 1 watt or 1,000 milliwatt IR laser, so 5 times brighter than this one, and you know, 8 or 9 times brighter than an LA5. This is the laser that was used by Air Force JTACs and combat controllers for, you know, much of the global war on terror. This device is probably responsible for just a lot of kinetic fight. A lot of bombs have ended up where this thing is pointing. They're also used on miniguns for much of Army and Air Force Special Operations aircraft as their primary pointer device for the minigun. We have an example of that over here. This is a special model of the Islid. Mr. Dillon was nice enough to let us borrow one of his demo miniguns, so we didn't have to bring our real one and deal with that. So this is an Islid that we set up to run off of 24 volt DZ. Most miniguns, not all, most miniguns run off of DC power. So there'll be a battery, a car battery, maritime battery, and it will trickle charge off of the power unit of the aircraft that it's on. But in the event that the helicopter crashes, the battery will be able to spin the minigun barrel for 30 minutes straight before it dies. So if the bird crashes, the door gunners can still fight and defend the aircraft in like a Black Hawk Down type of scenario. The miniguns that were on the aircraft initially were AC powered, so if the helicopter crashed and the pilots shut everything off to keep the aircraft from catching fire, the miniguns didn't have any juice. So since the weapon system itself has to be powered, we can get away from having to replace batteries by switching to a 24 volt system and then running it to a standard NATO plug, which would go down to the maritime battery. Unity Tactical made this really awesome pressure switch. It's a variant of the hot button with a base designed for the minigun, and the hot button just hooks to the pick rail, and they have fused it to be able to operate the Islid. It's got a cover and a locking button, so you can't accidentally fire your laser off while the aircraft is, while the weapon is not pointed in an optimal direction. And then with this 24 volt coupler unit, we made a little bit of a protective shroud to keep the Islid from getting any type of bump damage. When these guns malfunction, which is not very often, manually rotating the barrels is one of the easiest ways to crunch and grind and get all the cartridge casings and stuff out of the weapon system. And so the minigun operators will throw a giant screwdriver in between the barrels and manually wrench on them. So we made this protector so that no matter what the guys are doing to keep the gun running, they're not going to bang and beat up on their Islid. So there's always some other stuff we can't talk about, but I really appreciate you coming out. Love the work you do, man. Man, we've seen each other in a lot of SHOT shows, and it's just been my pleasure taking your viewers, through what BE's got going on this year. So if you guys have any questions, come on, stop by the booth, and I'd be happy to answer them. You guys have a good show.
If you like this video and want to support us, check out the MIL-SPEC Monkey Store. Although known for morale patches, we also specialize in a good selection of DIY hardware and tactical accessories.